Hello and welcome to this first look exploring session looking at, and I've been waiting to say this for quite a while, looking at the Parliament of Bees by John Day. We don't have a particularly precise dating for this text. I don't think it's fair to call it a play, but it may function like a play, which is why we're quite interested in how it flows as we have dialogue and debate and stuff. John Day, who frequently looks back in the sort of mid-Tudor interludes going, oh, I wish I could write stuff a bit like that. So this is the Parliament of Bees with their proper characters, or a beehive furnished with 12 honeycombs, as pleasant as profitable, being an allegorical description of the actions of good and bad men in these our days, by John Day, sometime student of Caius College in Cambridge. So, to read through the first half of the text today, we have reading John Day's dedication, reading a speaker, Cordato, done, and Poetaster is...
I'm Greg, and I'm buzzing about this one.
Ah, yes, so many B-gags to go, so little time. Reading Author's Commission, Dicast, Eleemozynus, Armiger, and Arethusa is...
Oh, honey, I'm Liza Graham, actor, singer, and maker of terrible puns in London.
Okay, it's just building up the expectation from each speaker as we go. Reading Prorex, Servant, Iltriste, and Vlania is...
Nicole. The other young.
A little blocky from Rachael today. I don't know about your internet connection. Hopefully that is fine. You were a little moving in stop-start motion animation style. Reading Book to the Reader, Villicus, Polypragmus, and Gnatho is...
Angela, looking forward to waxing lyrical.
Lovely. And I am your host and beekeeper, Robert Crighton, and hoping to try and keep this whole thing going.
As we comb through this text.
Yes, indeed. So we have a lot of dedicatory material. I will say that this is primarily based on the printing from 1641. There is an earlier manuscript which does differ quite considerably. This is mostly not based on that. It is mostly based on the later printing. Just for tidiness' sake, that doesn't mean we won't at some point go back over more detailed stuff. Anyway, without further ado, we're going to go to this opening dedication from John Day. So, Greg, could you read the first dedication, please?
To the worthy gentleman, Mr. George Butler, Professor of the Arts Liberal, and true patron to neglected poesy, all health and happiness. Worthy sir, I may be thought bold, if not impudent, upon so little acquaintance, to make this saucy trespass upon your patience. But fame, whose office, like the nomenclators at Rome, is to take notice and proclaim the name and virtues of every noble personage, has given you out for so ingenious a professor of the arts, and so bountiful a patron of your poor scholars, it has emboldened me to present my hive of bees to your favourable protection. And when I remember how Louis XI of that name, King of France, took notice and bountifully rewarded a decayed gardener who presented him with a bunch of carrots, I doubt not of their kind and generous entertainment, upon which assurance I rest ever. Yours in all service devote, John Day.
There's an additional dedication. Note to the impartial reader. Reader, I prithee be either so careful to understand me, or so courteous as not to read me. Old Father Seton told me long ago that inventio et judicium were the main grounds logic was built upon. And sure I am that they are the 2 feet that poetry walks upon. The first of the two I have provided for, though in the latter I request you to be assistant to me, that if my invention chance to prove Heraclite in any limb lame or defective, thy judgment like a true grammarian may rectify and set it upright. I observe the same method in my characters, or, if you will, colloquies, as Persius did in his satires, bringing in the bees themselves, speaking themselves, by which the author's intention is more lively expressed, the ingenious reader's understanding more easily and fully answered. I hope I have not committed so many errors as thy generosity would find, and yet I fear more than thy courtesy will mind. To content the judicious I hold it no great miracle, and therefore have some hope on't, but to please all, hic labor hoc opus est, and I utterly despair on't, and so must rest. Thine, as thou usest me, John Day. And now we'll go to the author's commission to his bees.
Abroad, my pretty bees! I hope you'll find neither rough tempest nor commanding wind to check your flight. Carry an humble wing. Buzz boldly what I bid, but do not sting your generous patron. Wheresoe'er you come, feed you on wax, leave them the honeycomb. Yet, if you meet a tart antagonist or discontented rugged satirist that slights your errand or his art that penned it, cry tanti, bid him kiss his muse and mend it. If then they mew, reply not you, but bring their names to me. I'll send out wasps, shall sting their malice to the quick. If they cap words, tell him your master is a twisting cords, shall make pride skip. If I must needs take pains, 'twill be to draw blood from detraction's veins. Though shevelled like parchment, art can make 'em bleed, and what I vow, Apollo has decreed. Your whole commission in one line's enrolled. Be valiantly free, but not too bold. John Day.
And now the book is going to speak. So this is the book to the reader.
In my commission, I am charged to greet and mildly kiss the hands of all I meet, which I must do, or never more be seen about the fount of sacred Hippocrene. Smooth-socked Talia takes delight to dance in the schools of art. The door of ignorance she sets a cross on. Detractors she doth scorn, yet kneels to censure, so it be true born. I had rather fall into a beadle's hands that reads, and with his reading understands, than some plush Midas that can read no further. But bees, who's penning? Mew, this man doth murder a writer's credit, and wronged poesy, like a rich diamond dropped into the sea, is by him lost for ever. Quite through read me, or 'mongst waste paper into pasteboard knead me. Press me to death, so though your churlish hands rob me of life, I'll save my paper lands for my next heir, who with poetic breath may in sad elegy record my death, if so. I wish my epitaph may be only 3 words: opinion murdered me. Liber lectori candido.
Frequently I enjoy doing the little dedicatory stuff because it's actually quite playful and fun. I particularly like reference the King of France and the gardener with the bunch of carrots. I think that's a lovely random thing. I'm sure that's entirely accurate. But also the fact that the author's commission to his bees, we're talking about doing dodgy bee gags at the beginning of this. Basically, John Day's got in actually first. I mean, he's piled in as many of them as he can, and to preempt that kind of stuff. So there's some nice little bits in this I rather enjoyed. It's not technically the most important element, but any thoughts anyone wants to throw in? on this opening gambit. Liza.
I quite like the book's conclusion that he would rather be ground into pasteboard than be a bad book.
Yeah, it's that make me into something more useful. Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't want to be a bad book, would you? If you're a book, I mean, as a book's ambition is to be a good book, surely. Or if you're going to be bad, going to be really bad.
Well, I suppose on closer reading, I guess the fate the book wants to avoid, and beautifully delivered by Angela, is being read by someone rich but who's not a good reader.
You want to be appreciated. You want a good reader.
Understood.
Although it's interesting that he suggests that he'd get an elegy written on his paper when he's been turned into pasteboard. So I'm not quite sure about all that. But of course you could, I suppose, recycle pasteboard again to be paper. But I'm not quite sure whether that's possible or not. Because you have to use rags for the paper. So I'm going to have to go and find this out.
Okay. Shall we get down to some bees? Yeah, that's what we're here for. That's this teasing. I'm just teasing you. So let us go to character number 1, Prorex, or the Master Bee's character. A parliament is held, bills and complaints referred and heard with several restraints of usurped freedom, instituted law, to keep the commonwealth of bees in awe. We have various speakers, Prorex, we have a speaker generally, we have coming up also Dicast as well, and Villicus. So we have a few bees, but it's primary Prorex and a speaker, and Prorex speaks first.
To us, who warranted by Oberon's love, write ourself, Mr. B, both field and grove, garden and orchard, lawns and flowery meads, where the amorous wind plays with the golden heads of wanton cowslips, daisies in their prime, some loving marigolds, the blossomed thyme, the blue-veined violets, and the damask rose, the stately lily, mistress of all those, are allowed and given by Oberon's free a reed, pasture for me and all my swarms to feed. Now that our will and sovereign intent may be made known, we call this Parliament, and as the wise determiner of power, proportion time to moments, minutes, hours, weeks, months, years, ages, distinguished day from night, winter from summer, profundity from height, in sublunaries, as in the course of heaven, bodies metaphysical run even, zeniths and zones have their apt stations, planets and stars their constellations, with orbs to move in, so divinely made, some spherically move, some retrograde, yet all keep course, so shall it be our care that every family have his proper sphere. And to that purpose, Auticus be groom, O fall our lodgings, and provide fit room to lay in wax and honey, both for us and all our household. Orconomicus, be you our steward, careful to fit quotidian diet, and so order it. Each may have equal portion, and besides needful provision. Carefully provide store against war and famine. Martio thee I have found valiant, thy authority, being approved for discipline in arms, shall be to muster up our warlike swarms of winged lances, for like a peaceful king, although we are loath to use our sting. Speaker, inform us what petitions our commons put up at these sessions. The bill preferred.
Ah, yes, that should be a
against-
stage direction. You're absolutely right.
Oh,
Or a bill preferred against the humble bee. Speaker, tell us all about it.
A bill preferred against a public wrong. The surly humblebee, who hath too long lived like an outlaw, and will neither pay honey nor wax, do service nor obey, but like a felon couched under a weed, watch his advantage to make boot and feed upon the top branch blossoms, and by stealth makes dangerous inroads on your commonwealth, robs the day labourer of his golden prize, and sends him weeping home with empty thighs. Thus, like a thief, he flies o'er hill and down, and outlaw-like doth challenge as his own your highness's due, nay, piratic detains the waxen fleet sailing upon your plains.
A great abuse, which we must have redressed before it grows so high unto the rest.
And here we have a bill preferred against the wasp.
A bill preferred against the wasp, a fly who merchant-like under pretence to buy makes bold to borrow and pays too.
But when?
Why? Ad calendas Grecas. Never then.
And a bill against the hornet.
Ah, there's the strange hornet, who doth ever wear a scaly armour and a double spear, couched in his front, rifles the merchant's packs upon the road, your honey and your wax he doth by stealth transport to some strange shore, makes rich their hives, and keeps your own groves poor.
I thank your industry, but will devise a statute that no such outlandish flies shall carry such high wing.
And here a bill preferred against the drone.
Yet these alone do not afflict us, but the lazy drone, our native country bee, who like the snail, that bankrout-like makes his own shell his jail, all the day long, in the evening plays the feast, and when the labouring bees have ta'en relief, be gone to rest, against all right and law acts burglary, breaks ope their house of straw, and not alone makes pillage of their hives, but butcher-like bereaves them of their lives.
Against all these outlaws, Martio, be thou Lieutenant General. Thou knowest well how to hamper such delinquents. Dicastes thee, we make our advocate, thy office be to moderate each difference and jar in this our civil economic war, and let both plaintiff and defendant be heard and dispatched for a conscionable fee, and more to keep our anomoi in awe. Ourself, the chief, will live under a law.
To each desert I'll render lawful weight. The scale of justice shall use no deceit.
It loses name and nature, if it should. Next, Villicus, thou that frequent'st the wood, our painful russet be. We create thee, chief bailiff both of fallow field and lea. Appoint each bee his walk, the meadow bee shall not encroach upon the upland lea, but keep his bound. If any with intent to wrong our state fly from our government, hoarding their honey up in rocks or trees, sell or transport it to our enemies, break down their garners, seize upon their store, in our name divide it mongst the poor. Only to us reserve our royalties, highways and wastes, all other specialties we make thee ruler of.
And I'll impart to all with a free hand and faithful heart.
Now break up court, and each one to his toil. Thrive by your labors, drones live the spoil. Fear neither wasp nor hornet, foreigners, be barred from being intercommoners. and having labored hard from light to light, with golden thighs come singing home at night. For neither drone, wasp, fly, nor humble bee shall dare to rob you of your treasury. So to your summer harvest, work and thrive. Bounty's the blessing of the laborer's hive.
And this opening closes in the original manuscript. There are lots of additional lines, but I'd just like to note that at the end, everyone says after this Bounty's blessing, that blessing, Oberon, we will deserve. They all call on Oberon again, and just a note that these bees are all calling on Oberon here. Always nice to hear from that character from, as we all know and love, from James IV by Green. In chatting with random Scots people. We've got this Parliament. We've got bills being proposed against various people. How are we feeling about Beeland here? And what's going on here? Angela.
So I'm a bit puzzled because I thought that the drones were kind of like part of the way that the hive worked, and yet there's this idea that these drones are bad things, and also there seems to be there's an idea here that somehow the humblebee and the drone are separate from the bees in the hive, but I don't understand why.
I don't know whether it's going to entirely match logic of bee logic. I don't know if it is or not, because of course if we're talking about a hive, a humblebee won't have anything to do with a hive situation, because a bumblebee is a slightly different species of a bee, I believe, off the top of my head. I don't think they function within a hive, whereas a drone does. So I'm wondering whether there's an interesting confusion going on here about what they're talking about. It might just be that they're talking about drones who are lazy rather than all the drones. That was another thought. But I was agreeing, I'm not quite sure. I mean, I can understand why the bees will be against hornets and wasps, because we all hate hornets and wasps because they're evil.
Well, hornets and wasps are also predators to bees, aren't they?
Yeah.
Drones, yeah, I mean, typically the bees often are often a metaphor used for the Commonwealth. Although at this stage they still think bees are ruled by a king. Beekeeping is something that's done in this time, but their observations are not always scientifically accurate. But they do know about bees, and yeah, I mean, I don't know whether drones, because drones are larger than workers, so it could be that they mistake another species that invades the hive for drones of that same species. Or do honeybee drones fight among themselves? Because they're begotten late in summer. They're males whose only purpose is to have sex and beget the next generation of bees.
Do drones seem to be a much more sluggish form of bee? And
well,
that's the
they're
sort of
lazy
logic.
because they don't go and gather pollen. They just eat what the others bring back.
Anyway, we may be confusing, of course, real bees with the logic of this text. So, it's an interesting. So obviously, we've got things against drone, wasp, fly, and humblebees. They shall not rob you of your treasury. So the treasury of the workers, presumably, and the king and queen situation, how that functions. Rachael.
I don't know about the drones, but in the text it says the humblebee. I think it was like referenced as an outlaw. It's like a highwayman. Prorex says something about it. No, the speaker says something about it. The surly humblebee who hath too long lived like an outlaw and will neither pay honey nor wax. So in this analogy, I don't know about the drone, but the humblebee is he's not somebody that's paying tax in this little bee tax thing.
Yeah, and again, that's reasonably accurate, because I don't think humblebees actually produce honey or anything, so they're fundamentally just bumbling about, and don't contribute to society. Greg, were you waving?
Yeah, it's really an observation. I think I don't know what to make of that scene. I love the speakers presenting of the argument. I'm just curious to see how this builds up, because since it is a thing of 12 parts. Are we going to learn more as time goes on? I mean, I know characters that are mentioned there do come in later. And the only one I can think of off the top of my head is Oberon, but spoilers, sorry. But no, it's an interesting. It's a lovely setup though, if it does sort of lay foundations for the rest of the play.
Yeah, because it's world building, isn't it? We're trying to figure out what this world actually is, because of course it's an allegorical world of allegorical bees, and what are the distinctions between the bees themselves and the different other things that are attacking the bees and their store, and they're talking about dividing things up amongst the poor, and how they're going to be running things, so which may or may not have anything to do with what follows.
Well, who knows?
That's what we're here to find out.
Stick around, guys.
For more exciting bee action.
To be honest.
Other thoughts before we move on to the next character to gather more data. Okay, let's go to character number 2, and the one I can't pronounce. Eleemozynus, the hospitable bee.
And it was definitely a double E.
Yeah, oh yeah, it's there's nothing wrong with the spelling, it's just it's really elaborate.
It's from Greek, it means charitable.
Ah.
Yes, so hence hospitable bee as it's translated here. So we're going to only have 2 characters talking for this one, Eleemozynus and Cordato, but it opens as ever with these lines. The author, in his russet bee, characters hospitality, describes his hive and for his feasts, appoints fit days and names his guests.
Your hive's a rare one. Rome did never raise a work of greater wonder.
Spare your praise, 'tis finished, and the cost stands on no score. None can for want of payment at my door curse my foundation, seeing the smoke go out of those louvers for whose straw I owe.
Why, to your hive have you seen many ways?
They answer just the number of 7 days. On Mondays such whose fortunes are sunk low, by good housekeeping I'll my alms bestow. On Tuesdays, such as all their lifetimes wrought their country's freedom and her battles fought. On Wednesdays, such as with painful wit have dived for knowledge in the sacred writ. On Thursdays, such as proved unfortunate in council and high offices of state. On Friday, such as for their conscience' sake are kept in bonds. On Saturdays I'll make feasts for poor bees past labor, orphan fry, and widows ground in mills of usury. Sundays for my tenants and all swains that labor for me on the groves and plains. The windows of my hive with blossoms dight are porters to let in our comfort, light. In number just 665, 'cause in so many days the sun doth drive his chariot stuck with beams of burnished gold about the world by spherical motion rolled. For my alms shall diurnal progress make with the free sun in his bright zodiac.
Some bees set all their tenants on the rack, not to feed bellies, but to clothe the back.
I with their actions hold no sympathy. Such eat the poor up, but the poor eat me.
And you'll perform all this?
Fair and upright, as are the strict vows of an Anchorite, An alms that by a niggard's hand is served is mould and gravelly bread. The hunger-starved may take but cannot eat. I'll deal none such, who with free hand shakes out but crumbs, gives much.
You'll have bad helps in this good course of life. You might do therefore well to take a wife.
A wife? When I should have one hand in heaven to write my happiness in leaves as even and smooth as porphyry, she'd by the other pluck me quite down. Virtue scarce knows a mother. Pardon, sweet females, I your sex admire, but dare not sit too near your wanton fire. Fearing your fairer beauty's tempting flame, my sound affections might put out of frame. In like manner, said Alexander by the daughters of Dreus, Nescio quid latentis veneni habet caro femina, ut prudentiores sitius corrumpat.
Who then shall reap the golden crop you sow? 'Tis half a curse to have wealth and not to know whom to call heir.
My heirs shall be the poor. Bees wanting limbs, such as in days of yore penned learned Cansons for no other meed but that in them unlettered bees might read, and reading lay up knowledge. Being alive, such I'll maintain, and being dead, my hive. Honey and wax will I bequeath to build a skep where weekly meetings may be held, to read and hear such ancient moral saws as may teach ignorance the use of laws. These will be a true inheritance, not to decay neither sword, fire, nor chance. Thunder of Jove nor mundane casualties can ruin the succession of these. Manors, parks, towns, nay, kingdoms may be sold, but still the poor stand like a lord's freehold unforfeited. Of all law tricks, not one can throw the poor out of possession. Should I lose all my hives and waxen wealth, out of the poor man's dish should I drink health, comfort and blessings. Therefore, keep aloof and tempt no further. Whilst I live, my roof shall cover naked wretches. When I die, I'll dedicate it to Saint Charity.
And thus ends this hospitable bee. It's interesting. It's sort of like somewhere between an architect and a tour guide in places here. Just going, so why do you have so many entrances? Well, let me explain. So here's the conceit of the design, but also this sort of sense of trying to build something for the future for the poor and endowing something for the next generation. There's something really interesting here. Again, it's world building. It feels all world building. I'm liking this hospitable bee. Thoughts from the room, Liza?
Well, in the earlier 20th century in America, we had these captains of industry, and I think it might have been Carnegie who said, "He who dies rich dies disgraced." Meaning that while you live, you should give away all that you can. This bee, it's not quite explained how he's prosperous, how he can afford this life where he maintains so many groups of bees that are in need. Bees lacking limbs, scholar bees. We've just had the Parnassus plays where we had a lot of poor scholars who were having to beg for patronage and scrounge, and Eleemozynus has thought about this, and he's going to maintain some scholarly bees. And yes, he's got different groups of bees coming to his hive on all 7 days. So this definitely is a model of charity. And it seems to be a self-sustaining model in that he's not going to run out, but he also would not have anything to bequeath to children if he had them, and a wife would, which is a thing. Like people get away with things that they would otherwise think morally corrupt if they believe that they're doing it to benefit their children. So this bee doesn't want to get married, this bee denies heteronormativity, and definitely just wants to live as a single bee and give away his fortune.
Yeah, it's very definite on not having the wife front there.
And he also says that if he himself became poor, he would be sustained by charity, which is a leap of thought very uncommon amongst rich folk today.
Rachael.
The one part of this dude's speech where he says, because in so many days the sun doth drive the, he's talking in astrology speak. He's saying just that a year can pass, and he's got windows on all sides of his house. So and it's always sunny wherever he lives. So he gets, I don't know, that's what it's saying. But it's just saying that in a complicated way.
Yeah, they've got windows for everyone, which is nice. You get sun all year round. It's that's cool. I mean, I'm starting to get this hive is starting to look more like the Gherkin in London at the moment. In terms of its architectural logic. But yeah, it's nice that we've got that sense of things. I don't know who mentioned civic pageantry earlier. I was just talking about the kind of open house that this person is holding there is sort of a bit like the Lord Mayor in that regard. That he's going to have open table for all comers, which is nice. That may be completely unrelated to anything. I just that just as a parallel leapt to me. Angela.
The whole concept of hospitality was kind of like a big one, obviously, at the time. There was lots of castigating of nobles and other people with land if you weren't hospitable. So this is the ideal of that hospitable character, isn't it? I think what's sort of struck me, ever the historian, is that there's a little kind of Catholic turn here where he talks about being like an anchorite and he doesn't want to marry and he's on his own. So he is this sort of like sense of a saint in a way, which is quite interesting.
Okay, shall we move on to character number 3 in this world? I think maybe we should think of this as zooming in on random members of the hive. I think if we're hoping for plot, you may be disappointed. We've gone from the Parliament building. We've nipped out into the forecourt where the architect of everything is sort of explaining his wonders. It felt somewhere between an architect and a tour guide. It was sort of that sort of, and here's where all the things live. Anyway, character number 3, Thrasso or Polypragmus, the plush bee. There's only 2 speakers for this one, Polypragmus and a servant. And once again, we get some lines. Invention here doth character, a mere vainglorious reveller, who scorns his equals, grinds the poor, hunts only riots, and his... Line blank, if anyone was worried. We don't know what the last word is there.
Yes, we do.
Yes, we do. But let's move on.
The room smells. Stand off. Yet stay, d'ye hear? Oh, the saucy sun which mounted in our sphere strives to outshine us.
So the poor bees hum.
Poor bees? Pot guns, illegitimate scum, and bastard flies, taking adulterate shape from reeking dunghills. If that meddling ape, zanying my greatness, dares but once presume to vie expense with me, I will consume his whole hive in a month. Say that you saw his new raised frame. How is it built?
straw, dyed in quaint colors, here and there a row of Indian bents, which make a handsome show.
How? Straw and bent, say'st? I will have one built like Pompey's theatre, the ceiling gilt, and interseamed with pearl to make it shine like High Jove's palace, my descents divine. My great hall I have paved with clouds, which done by wondrous skill, an artificial sun shall roll about, reflecting golden beams, like Phoebus dancing on the wanton streams. And when 'tis night, just as that sun goes down, I'll have the stars draw up a silver moon in her full height of glory overhead. A roof of woods and forests I'll have spread, trees growing downwards, full of fallow deer. When of the sudden listening you shall hear a noise of horns and hunting, which shall bring Actian to Diana in the spring, where all shall see her naked skin. And there Actian's hounds shall their own master tear, and emblem of his folly that will keep hounds to devour and eat him up asleep. Ah, all this I'll do, that men may with praise may crown my fame for turning the world upside down. And what plush bees sit at this flesh fly's table?
None but poor lame ones and the ragged rabble.
My board shall be no manger for scabbed jades to lick up provender. No bee that trades suck honey here.
Poor scholars.
Beg and sterve, or steal and hang. What can such rogues deserve? Gallows and gibbets, hang 'em. Give me lutes, viols, and clarions, such music sweets. Scholars, like common beadles, lash the times, whip our abuse, and fetch blood of our crimes. Let him feed hungry scholars. Fetch me whores, they are man's bliss, and other kingdoms' sores. We gave in charge to seek the grove for bees coming in cookery, and rare qualities, and wanton females that sell sin for gold.
Some of all sorts you have.
They are stale and old. I've seen 'em twice.
We have multiplied your store unto 1,000.
More. Let me have more than the Grand Signor. And my change as rare, tall, low, and middle-sized, the brown and fair. I'd give a prince his ransom now to taste black Cleopatra's cheek, only to waste a richer pearl than that of Antony's, that fame might write up my name and erase his. Oh, that my mother had been Paris's whore, and I might live to burn down Troy once more, so that by that brave light I might have run at barley break with my sleek courtesan. Yet talks of scholars, see my face no more. Let the portcullis down and bolt the door. But one such tattered ensign here being spread would draw in numbers here. Here shall my rogues be fed. Charge our mechanic bees to make things meet, to manacle base beggars hands and feet, and call it Polypragmus whipping post, or the beggar's ordinary. They shall taste my roast. And if ye spy a bee that has a look stigmatical, drawn out like a black book, full of Greek pies, to such I'll give large pay, to watch and ward for poor bees night and day, and lash 'em soundly if they approach my gate. Whipcord's my bounty, and the rogue shall hat. The poor are but the earth's dung, fit to lie covered in muck heaps, not offend our eye. Thus in your bosoms Jove his bounty flings. What are gold mines but rich dust for kings to scatter with their breath, as chaff with wind? Let me then that have gold bear a king's mind, and give till my arm aches, who bravely powers but into a wench's lap such golden showers. Maybe Jove's equal, there his ambition ends in obscure rivalship. But he that spends a world of wealth makes a whole world his debtor, and such a noble spender is Jove's better. That man I'll be. I'm Alexander's heir to one part of his mind. I wish there were 10 worlds.
How for to conquer?
No, to sell. For alpine hills of silver. I could well husband that merchandise, provided I might at one feast draw all that treasure dry. Who hoards up wealth is base, who spends it brave. Earth breeds gold, so I tread but on my slave.
Oh, wonderful. Yet let all wonder pass. He's a great bee and a vainglorious ass.
Yes, that seemed like an appropriate end line there. I quite like that. Yes, Polypragmus is basically the opposite of our hospitable bee. We've got someone who is only interested in their own desires, has no interest in feeding scholars. That's a real bee in his bonnet about feeding scholars. None of that. Yeah, very unhappy with any of that. Yeah, and a thoroughly unpleasant character in all regards, and great detail. Yeah. How are we feeling about Polypragmus and their life or goals, shall we say? Liza.
Well, what strikes me is that in the last chapter, the charitable bee, he was called a russet bee, and russet was a color associated with country people. Really, it was a color that anyone below a certain social class could wear, but it was associated. There was something very rural, very country feeling about the charitable bee, and there's something very city feeling about this one.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a sense of Polypragmus trying to be witty and trying to, he's interested in all the things. And he's called Plush. So one suggests that his beeness has a certain cut to his jib, as it were. Angela.
Yes, I think you're right. And there's this whole, you can just imagine these two characters, can't you, on stage, dressed in their very different dress. But as I was saying about the whole idea of hospitality should be given in country estates to the poor, to the working man. All the great festivals kept by the kind of like lords of estates out in the countryside. Whereas what's always happening is that young men especially, who are only interested in fashion, are constantly being attacked. Certainly, well, actually right through the whole century, but very much so in the late part of the 16th century and the early part of the 17th century, in all kinds of texts and of course in ballads and other sorts of things. So it's actually really interesting to see these two, positioned in this way as bees, of course.
Yeah, but there's also the way that this opens as well when they're talking about the room smelling, and I'm wondering what and are we crossing into and there's mention of flies and things. Just wondering which is something else that cities have a problem with, which is what to do with the getting rid of certain waste products. Yes, I'm struggling with words today, really. So yeah, I don't know. That was sort of alluded to, but not really explicitly talked about. So I was wondering there, because he's talking about they're comparing with this other hive, and this that's being put together, and he's talking about his hypothetical hive that he would build if he had the wherewithal. With trees growing downwards which I'm not sure he understands how trees work, unless I just misunderstood the line. And the servant's pretty much the feed, but the servant does get the best line at the end, just to say he's an arse. Any other thoughts about Angela?
I was just going to say about his downward growing forest and all the rest of it. This lets him talk about his being famous for turning the world upside down, which is a very old idea, isn't it? So it's kind of like, so it enables him to bring that in. I'm throwing everything into confusion.
And whereas the previous bee was not interested in having a wife at all, this one is very much on pleasure of a different sort, some much less pleasant attitudes. Liza.
Well, neither bee wants to marry, I think. I mean, we don't get a sense that Polypragmus has children, because he'd probably talk about them as being parasites as well. Eleemozynus is happily chaste, and Polypragmus is all like spending his income, not giving anyone charity, but spending his income on making his house look nice, having fancy music, fancy perfumes for the room, and whores. Lots of whores. Rachael.
Yeah, it's basically more. Let me have more. More. How do you like it? Is his theme. Rachael.
I don't know if he. I mean, he doesn't say he has children in this at all, but his enthusiasm for women and that he talks very despairingly about. Back up towards the beginning, he talks about illegitimate scum and bastards. The words adulterate. I think if he did have a little baby bee that showed up somewhere, he doesn't take care of it or have interest in it. I don't know. I think there might be there could be an insinuation or something like that, but yeah, he's just not a nice person.
No, he generally looks on the populace of the world and just goes, "You're all scum," he's not a great chap. Not a great chap as bees go. Anyway, let's leave this plush bee behind, and let's go to another character number 4. Armiger the Field Bee, and we're going to be reunited with at least one character we've met before. Prorex will return. We're also going to meet Armiger Dunn. I don't know if the other one mentioned there actually speaks, so I'm just going to pretend that they don't exist for the moment. And we have, and again, a little intro. The poet under Armiger shadows a soldier's character. His worth the courtier's coy neglect. His pen doth sparingly detect.
Is Master B at leisure to speak Spanish with a bee of service?
No.
Smoked pilcher, vanish! Proud Don with the ochre face. I'd but desire to meet thee in a breach midst smoke and fire, and for tobacco whiffing gunpowder out of a brazen pipe that should puff louder than thunder roars. There, though illiterate daw thou ne'er couldst spell, thou shouldst read canon law. How the jades prance in golden trappings, ho! Is Master B at leisure?
What to do?
To hear a soldier speak.
I cannot tell. I am no ear pricker.
Yet you hear well. You're of the court?
Mr. B's chief barber.
Then, Don, you lied. You are an ear picker.
Well, if thou comest to beg a suit at court, I shall descend so low as to report thy paper business.
I beg, proud Don, I scorn to scribble. My petition is written on my bosom in red wounds.
I am no surgeon, sir. Elon.
Base hounds! Thou god of gay apparel, what strange looks make suit to do thee service? Mercer's books show men's devotions to thee. Hell cannot hold a fiend more stately. My acquaintance sold, 'cause poor. Stood now my beaten tailor by me, plaiting of my rich hose. My silkman nigh me, drawing upon my lordship's courtly calf prayers of embroidered stockings, or but half a dozen things called creditor. Had my barber perfumed my lousy thatch this nitty harbour, these pied-winged butterflies would know me then, but they ne'er landed in the Isle of Man. That such a thing as this, a decoy fly, should buzz about the ear of royalty. Such whale-boned bodied rascals that owe more to linen drapers, to new vamp a whore, than all their race from their grand beldam forth to this their reign in clothes were ever worth. That such should tickle a commander's ear with flattery, when we must not come near, but stand for want of clothes, though we win towns amongst alms-basket men, such silken clowns, when we with blood deserve, share our reward. We held scarce fellow mates to the blackguard. Why should a soldier, being the world's right arm, be cut off by the left? Infernal charm! Is the world all ruff and feather? Is desert bastard? Doth custom cut of his child's part no difference twixt a wild goose and a swan, a tailor and a true-born gentleman? So the world thinks, but search the herald's notes, and you shall find much difference in their coats.
Field B, speak with me, bold Armiger. Welcome, thy bosom is a register of thy bold acts. Virtue still poor, I see.
Poor, rich.
In scars.
In wealth, in honesty. Since first I read my ABC of war, in 9 set fields I sailed by that bright star. Ere I was truncheon high, I had the style of beardless captain, and I all this while drilled under honesty. Ne'er pursed dead pay, never made weak the longer by a day. A soldier dead, his pay did likewise die, and still I served one general, honesty. From his own trencher I was daily fed with cannon bullets, taught to chew steel and lead, nay, digest iron, and whene'er I die, I'll have no epitaph but honesty writ o'er me.
I know it, thou black swan. I have seen this bee, in his fate more than man. Right in the field, such stories with his sting, that our best leaders, reading or his writing, swore 'twas a new philosophy of fighting. His acts were so remarkable in one field, fought 'gainst the surly wasp. I needs must yield, desert his due, having bruised my filmy wing, and in fierce combat blunted my keen sting, beaten into a tuft of rosemary. This manly bee, armed with true honesty, 3 times that day redeemed me, and bestride my body with colossus thighs. He did, whilst all the thunderbolts that war could throw at me fell on his head. He cannot now choose but be honest still, and valiant still. His hive with wax and honeycombs I'll fill, and in reward of thy bold chivalry, make thee commander of a colony, wishing all such as honor discipline, to serve him and make honesty their shrine.
Okay, so we have a Warby here. Since I first read my ABC of War, I want a pop-up book for for that. It's just, I want to see it. Yeah, and we have a Don, so I was wrong. It's not done. It's Don Cocadillo. Dilio is he's the bee is speaking with initially. And yeah, so and then Prorex is brought back into the picture. Thoughts about this bee? And they've got many wounds in service of their written on my bosom in red wounds for their service. And looks like going to be made a commander of a colony. Angela.
I'm really enjoying how they're taking all these classical things, luxury is bad, hospitality is good, and all those different things, and then turning it into bee so that he's got all his wounds by fighting a wasp with just one sting. He's fighting over this thing, and then the king has been saved by him, and he got pressed into the lavender or something. Was it lavender or rosemary?
Rosemary, but they both attract bees.
It's sweet. It's really kind of it's nice.
Yeah, it's painting a lovely picture. I feel this thing needs animation. I feel that's what it needs. It needs to be an animated bee thing because I want to see that. I want to see that stuff. That's fun, and I don't want to see that on, with people dressed as bees. I want to see animation. That's my thinking. I don't know. Maybe bee costumes. Maybe that's what we should go for. Full on Monoptera. That's what we should be looking for. Liza.
Yeah, there's this narrative where the soldier bee who spent his life defending the king bee and his kingdom gets given attitude by a mere barber bee, just because the barber is dressed for the court and the soldier presumably is not. And he says, "Oh, well, why should people who look nice be treated better than us? Because I actually, I fought to defend it. Beedom isn't bee. I fought to defend this hive, and here I am taking second place to this barber just because he looks nice, basically." But the king luckily comes out and recognizes Armiger's deserving.
Yeah, it's heading towards a happy conclusion. So let us see what other characters are available in this hive. Let us dive into another cell and see what might be going on in character number 5, the Poetaster, the Poetical bee. We've got 3 speakers again for this one: Gnatho, Iltriste, and Poetaster. And again, a little intro. Here invention aims his drift at poets' wants and patrons' thrift, servile scorn and ignorant pride, free judgment slightly doth deride.
A scholar speak with me.
He says a poet. I think no less, for his apparel show it. He's of some standing. His cloak is worn to a serge.
He's poor. That proves his high things scorn. Mundane felicity disdains to flatter. For empty air, or like crow poets chatter, for great men's crumbs. But what's his suit to me?
To beg a dinner, old Dame Charity, lame of all 4 limps out, and sounds a call for all the roads.
Ouch, senseless animal, hearing of my retirement and the hate I bear the court attendants and high state, he's come perhaps to write my epitaph.
Some lousy ballad? I cannot choose but laugh at these poor squitter pulps.
Thou ignorant elf, should he know this, he'd make thee hang thyself in strong iambics.
What's that? Hemp or flax?
A halter stretch thee, such ill-tutored jacks, poison the fame of patrons. I doubt me, be thought Job's wife. I keep such scabs about me. Seal up thy lips, and if thou needs must sin, do't privately. Out, spaniel, bring him in.
He's come. Poet, to you my love presents this book.
I am unworthy on't. Except a hook hung at each line to choke me. Stay what name hast given thy brat to the most honored dame comes to lying into the world? Be thy leaves torn, rent, and used baselessly as thy titles born?
Rare sport. No marvel if this poet begs for his lame verses. They've neither feet nor legs.
Yes, before the poet steps in to speak, just a note from earlier. The poet should have said a line that ended up embedded with Gnatho. So, to you, my love presents this book should have been the Poetaster. So the Poetaster has come forth. He's come and presented to them a book of which Iltriste has said, I am unworthy on't. Greg will give you the feed line in for Poetaster's additional dialogue. So, Gnatho, could you do rare sport, please, to cue in the Poetaster?
Rare sport. No marvel if this poet begs for his lame verses. They've nor feet nor legs.
Nor thou, humanity.
Go burn this paper sprite.
Sir, your dark poetry will come to light.
You are not noble thus to wound the heart, tear and make martyrs of the limbs of art before examination. Caesar taught no such court doctrine. Alexander thought better of Homer's lofty Iliads and hugged their master. Though this and such gallant jades were spur-gulled hackneys kick at their betters, though some hide-bound worldlings neither give nor show countenance to poets. Yet the noble spirit loves virtue for its own sake, and rewards merit, though ne'er so meanly habited, nor be that frequents Hebla. Takes more pains than we do in our canzons, yet they live and thrive richly when we want wax to store our hive.
I honor thee, nor dislike I thee. Only thy fawning title troubled me. I love your
We seem to have lost Rachael there. See if Rachael comes back.
robes and in your libraries, among read whole volumes of most injured brightest flames,
We'll
and
just wait
dip
for the
thy
lag to
pen
cut
in
in now,
wormwood
any
juice for
second
me.
now.
Canst write a satire, tart authority, do call 'em libels.
Hello, Rachael. Are you with us? Can you hear us?
Canst write such a one? Yeah. Oh, was I?
You're
Can you hear
lagging
me?
really. It's you're coming through in sort of fits and starts. We got a sort of Dadaist version of that
goodness.
speech, which I'm sure was lovely, but it didn't quite come across. Let's see if you're running on time with it. Try that speech again, please, Iona Posey.
I honor poesy, nor dislike I thee. Only thy fawning title troubled me. I love your groves and in your libraries, amongst quaint odes and passionate elegies, have read whole volumes of most injured dames, writed by poets, assume thy brightest flames, and dip thy pen in wormwood juice for me. Canst write a satire, tart authority, do call 'em libels. Canst write such a one?
I can mix ink and copperas.
So go on.
They mingle poison with them.
Do't for me. Thou hast the theory.
Yes, each line must be a cord to draw blood.
Good.
The light today, the stab from it touches.
Better. Rare.
Such satires as you call them must lance wide the wounds of men's corruptions, ope the side of vice, search deep for dead flesh and rank cause. A poet's ink can better cure some sores than surgeon's balsam.
Undertake this cure. I'll crown thy pains with gold.
I'll do it, be sure, but I must have the party's character.
The master be.
Oh, that thunder doth deter and fright my muse. I will not wade in ills beyond my depths, nor dare I pluck the quills of which I make pens out of the eagle's claw. No, I am a loyal subject.
A jackjaw. This baseness follows your profession. You are like common beetles, easily won, to whip poor bees to death, scarce worth the striking, but fawn with slavish flattery, and throw liking on great drones' vices. You clap hands at those which proves your vices friends and virtues foes, where the true poet indeed doth scorn to gild a coward's tomb with glories, or to build a sumptuous pyramid of golden verse over the ruins of an ignoble hearse. His lines, like his invention, are born free, and both live blameless to eternity. He holds his reputation so dear as neither flattering hope nor servile fear can bribe his pen to temporize with kings. The blacker are his crimes, the louder sings. Go, go, thou darest not, canst not write. Let me invoke the help of sacred poesy. May not a woman be a poet?
Yes, and learn the art with far more easiness than any man can do. For poesy is but a feigning. Feigning is to lie, and women study that art more than men.
I am not fit to be a poet then, for I should leave off feigning and speak true.
Your nan then make good poets.
Very few, I think, be good.
I think so too.
Be plain. How might I do to hit the master vein of poesy?
I descend from Perseus. He taught his pupils to breed poets thus, to have their temples girt and swaddled up with nightcaps, to steal juice from Hebe's cup, to steep their barren crowns in pilfer clouds from off Parnassus' top, to build them shrouds of laurel boughs, to keep invention green, then drink 9 healths of sacred Hippocrene to the 9 muses. This says Perseus will make a poet. I think cheaper thus, gold, music, wine, tobacco, and good cheer makes poets soar aloft and sing out clear.
Are you born poet?
Yes.
So die.
Oh, die never.
My misery's then a poet that lives ever, for time has lent it such eternity, and full succession it can never die. How many sorts of poets are there?
2, great and small poets.
Great and small ones, so which do you call the great? The fat ones?
No, but such as we have great heads which emptied forth, fill all the world with wonder at their worth. Proud flies, swollen big with breath and windy praise, yet merit breaks and nettles stead of bays. Such titled cods and lobsters of art sea, the small ones called the shrimps of poesy. The greater number of spawn-feathered bees fly low like kites, the other mount on trees. Those pick up dunghill garbage, these drink wine out of Jove's cup. Those mortal, these divine.
Who is the poet?
Oh, emulation, the next necessity, but detraction, the worst of all.
Imagine I were one. Why should I get bite?
Why, opinion?
I've too much of that already, for 'tis known that in opinion I am overthrown. Opinion is my evidence, judge and jury. Opinion has betrayed me to the fury of vulgar scandal. Partial opinion gapes like a sheriff for execution. I wonder still how scholars came undone, and now I see 'tis by opinion, that foe to worth, sworn enemy to art, patron of ignorance, hangman of desert. Ask any man what can betray a poet to scandal. Base opinion shall do it. I'll therefore be no poet, no, nor make 10 muses of your 9 my reason take. Verses, though freemen born, are bought and sold like slaves. Their makers too, that merit gold, are fed with shales. Whence grows this slight regard? From hence opinion gives their reward.
And thus we have the closing of this conference between a potential patron of the arts and the patrie. Poetaster does not want to libel the master bee. Not into that. That it was almost like a plot was starting, but I would have been very disappointed if that happened, because I don't think that's what we're here for. So yeah, we have a scholar, a poet, and a patron, and poor Squitterpulps as well, which is yes, a lovely turn of phrase. Thoughts from the room about this little exchange? Primarily a dialogue, even though Gnatho was there at the beginning, sort of disappears fairly swiftly, to leave it as a dialogue. Angela.
This is a question I'm hoping Liza or somebody might know. So have these names got meanings? Are they like Iltriste and Gnatho?
I've got nothing. Rachael.
Iltriste, Triste. It might be Iltriste or something like that, but it means sadness. Like how in Tristan and Isolde, Tristan is named. You know, he has his name for some sort of word for sadness, for triste.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I know Gnatho means like jaw or beak. What's it? Iltriste interests me because I think this is the first female character we've had. Iltriste is a she-bee. And a poet comes wanting her to be his patron. And she's concerned with her reputation because, of course, as a patron, the people who she patronizes will establish her reputation, good or ill. And now, but Iltriste, like, there's some backstory that we're not getting. Like, she's out of favor with the court for some reason, and she doesn't like the master bee, and she asks the poet to write her a satire against the master bee. And the poet is like, yes, I love writing satire. Yes, we pierce the corruption of the time. And then she's like, well, write one on the master bee. And he's like, no, I can't do that.
No, that's too much. That's too much. I couldn't do that.
And then she asks, well, can I be a poet? May not a woman be a poet? Which is a wonderful question for this times. And the poetess says, well, yes, women can be better poets than men, in fact, because they lie. Yes, poetry is lying. And she's like, no, I don't want to lie. I want to tell the truth. And Poetaster's like, well, you can't be a poet then. Which is kind of, I don't know. I was very intrigued by this dialogue because it seemed less predictable. It seemed more like people talking and less like a sort of morality tableau.
I do particularly like that. Very few I think be good. I think so too. It's just as true today as ever about the quality of people's work sometimes in the world. Are you born a poet? Do you therefore die a poet? Applying logic to questions that are sort of, just up in the air. Yeah, so again, it is like, yes, there's a little bit of court life in bee form, that we're just getting a little snatch of. Any more before we go to our final bit for the session? Okay, let's go to character number 6. It's the rivals. Speakers Arethusa and Vlania, or Lania, depending on whatever you want to pronounce the V. And once again, we have an opening ditty. Invention labours to discover the pretty passions of a lover, showing how in amorous fits long lost a bee may find her wits.
Well met, fair beauty. Pray you, can you tell news of Meletus?
Such a bee doth dwell in my father's hive, but ask you as a friend.
Yes, and as one who for his good would spend living and life.
Yet not as much as I.
Why? Do you love him?
I'm mine own echo, I.
Wherefore?
I know not, there's some fallacy, for not a village fly nor meadow bee that traffics daily on the neighbor plain, but will report how all the winged train have sued to me for love, when we have flown in swarms out to discover fields new blown. Happy was he could find the forwardest tree, and cull the choicest blossoms out for me. Of all their labors they allowed me some, and like my champions manned me out and home, yet I loved none of them. Philon bee, well skilled in verse and amorous poesy, as we have sat at work, both of one rose, has hummed sweet canzons, both in verse and prose, which I ne'er minded. Astrophel a bee, although not so poetical as he, yet in his full invention, quick and ripe, in summer evenings on his well-tuned pipe, upon a woodbine blossom in the sun, our hive being clean swept and our day's work done, would play me 20 several tunes, yet I, nor minded Astrophil, nor his melody. Then there's Amnitur, who, for whose love fair lead, that pretty bee flies up and down the mead, with rivers in her eyes, without deserving. Sent me trim acron boughs of his own carving, yet none of these, my hive-born playfellows and neighbor bees, could I affect until this strange bee came, and him I love with such an ardent flame, discretion cannot quench.
Now I begin to love him. Fresh examples ushers sin. How doth he spend his time?
Labors and toils, extracts more honey out of barren soils than 20 lazy drones. I have heard my father, steward of the hive, profess that he had rather lose half the swarm than him, if it be poor or weak, grown faint on's way, or by misfortune break a wing or leg against a twig, alive or dead, he'll bring into the missus' hive him and his burthen. But the other day, on the next plain, there grew a mortal fray betwixt the wasps and us. The wind grew high, and rough storms raged so impetuously, our bees could scarce keep wing. Then fell such rain, it made our colony forsake the plain, and fly to garrison. Yet still he stood, and 'gainst the whole swarm made his party good. And at each blow he gave, cried out his vow, and Arethusa on each bough. In tender blossom he engraves her name with his sharp sting. To Arethusa's fame he consecrates his actions. All his worth is only spent to character her forth. On damask roses and the leaves of pines, I have seen him write such amorous moving lines in Arethusa's praise, as my poor heart have, when I read them, envied her desert, and wept inside to think that he should be to her so constant, yet not pity me.
Oh,
Wherefore sigh you?
Amoratho. Oh, my marble heart melts.
Would sigh and weep you too?
Yes, in mere pity that your churlish fate should, for true love, make you unfortunate.
I thank you. What this Arethusa is, I do not know. Only my suit is this: if you do know this bee, when you next meet him, he's laboring in that mead, in my name greet him, and tell him that I love him more, far more, than Arethusa can. Nay, I adore his memory so that he shall be my saint. And when his tender limbs grow weak and faint, I'll do his labor and mine own. The spring, being dry, grows much unfit for laboring. To prevent famine and a sudden dearth, for his sake I'll befriend the barren earth, and make it fruitful with a shower of tears, in which I'll drown his scorn and mine own fears.
What have I heard? Amoratho, pardon me, for I have been by too much cruel to thee. Yet, if, as she reports, I find thy heart bequeathed to Arethusa's weak desert, nature shall work a miracle so strange, all amorous bees shall wonder at my change.
And exit. Yeah, I'm liking this image of a bee engraving her name with his sharp sting. This bee's just constantly going around. That's what they use their stings for. That's the important thing for wood marking, engraving in trees. That's if you didn't know that before, that's a fact. That's what bees do.
Yeah. If I'm not misreading this, the love interest bee seems to change names halfway through, from Meletus to Amoratho. But also the bees who previously loved Vlania seem to be references to contemporary poets, possibly. I mean, Astrophil is definitely a Sir Philip Sidney reference. I'm not sure who Philon is or who Amniter is, but if Astrophil is a reference to someone specific, then perhaps so must they be. Anyway, Arethusa, I'm happy for her because she learns that the person she loves, the bee she loves her too, and that's rare in this world. And I think I hope they're very happy and have like a hive together or something.
Yeah, I'm not sure how love functions in a bee society. I suppose it's there. So obviously, you've got commitments to the queen that and stuff. So, yeah. Other thoughts about some of this, Angela?
Well, it's just I feel like half of these little sketches, as it were, you kind of keep feeling like there's half a play missing. That it's kind of like something where there's a backstory, and sometimes you sort of need the backstory. So it's very strange, and particularly actually in the one before this. I mean, this one you can get what's happening, of course, apart from the small matter that Liza's pointed out that the person you're in love with, you've actually forgotten their name. So that's unfortunate, but it does seem kind of like a very strange combination of stories.
And that's the thing is, I don't think there's any point that there is a meaningful connectivity to any of the stories. It's just that because they're leaping in, you're sort of expected to play catch up. I mean, I've been sort of looking at the textual variations as we've gone. You know, the manuscript material sometimes gives you more that's helpful, and sometimes it just gives you other stuff. So it's not. I don't think it's necessarily a matter of stuff, but it does seem to be there's some sort of design play here. Liza.
Okay, I've done the thing you're not supposed to do. I've looked ahead a couple scenes, and it seems like the male bee who loves Arethusa is he's now referred to as innamorato or innamorato, which is Italian for someone in love. So that might be why the name changes from Meletus to Amorato.
Or unless it's just some sort of reference to someone of that kind of thing, that it's just being very clever and therefore not very clear. Yeah. Other thoughts before we go into sort of about this one, the rivals, as it were. Were you waving, Rachael, or were you just no? That's a no. No. Okay, so we're about halfway through these sketches. There are 12. We've done 6, and the introductory stuff. And it's an interesting world. I'm sort of liking it. I'm sort of digging into it. It doesn't really have an extended plot. It does a lot of world building and these character sketches. Each section is called a character, and so it's much more interested in characters. It almost feels like the Bible that you get for a television series. So here are all the characters, and now you can go away and write the thing. Rather than the thing, if that makes sense. It isn't interested in building an extended plot. It's just throwing his little character sketches. So, any final thoughts from the room about this so far? Anyone wants to throw in? Angela, do you have any final thoughts about the bees? The bees so far?
No, I think you're right that it's like when you get a book of characters, or when you get kind of like a book of sketches. It just moves from one thing to another. They're not interconnected. I suppose it's like that. But if you were thinking in terms of them being staged, then because of time, because you'd expect it to be played, one after the other, I think it would be quite confusing. So I wonder if they would be good to work as one-offs rather than in that kind of way. But they were quite nice. I liked them. There was some fun, and it was good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the advantage, we can work on these, as I say, across different media, and we could look at them as individual pieces as well as piecing them together as a wider thing. I'm interested in music now. I'm starting to think on a musical level. They're bees. They should have some buzzing. I think that should be allowed. So yeah, but it is an interesting. It's a really interesting text. Liza, any final thoughts?
Well, you mentioned music, and there is one instrument from this period that buzzes, and nobody's mentioned it yet. But the hurdy-gurdy has a buzzing. Some of them anyway have what's called a buzzing bridge, which when you crank it, it provides a bass that goes. I'm not doing a very good impression of it.
I'm very disappointed, Liza. If I know anyone who could do a good impression of a hurdy-gurdy, I was expecting it to be you.
You're right. But I mean, all the impressions can't be good. I have to falter now and again just to remind myself that I'm mortal and fallible. Yeah, I mean, we started off this play with what looked like a pretty straightforward metaphor for beehive as commonwealth, and we're getting a little bit more into character studies here. and the author, I think, is getting a little carried away with their enjoyment writing these dialogues and these character studies. So I'm really interested to see what will happen next, whether anything will be resolved.
Will there be a resolution? Some of the characters do recur. I mean, we have had Prorex pop in. So, there may be some more of that coming further down the line. We've mentioned Oberon at the beginning of the text, and spoilers for next time, Oberon will turn up. So, that's all sorts of exciting stuff that could be going on there. Greg, having helped wrangle the text for reading, any final thoughts from you?
Yeah, it's interesting because unless it was a completely different John Day, if this was the only text I knew by him, I'd be like, oh, it's just one of those people that writes these strange little pamphlet things. But he did write actual plays, and I feel like this is 6 characters in search of a play, rather than actually being a proper set of scenes. I'm glad I'm in for tomorrow, because I think I'd have been kicking myself by this point. I don't think it will resolve itself, but I think it will be interesting to see where it ends up.
Yeah, I mean, for all its occasional hints of that it's a staging, that there's staging conventions going on. We have occasional mute characters who are inferred as being in the room. In practice, it doesn't function as a dramatic text in that way. I mean, there are scenes within it that do occasionally function, but overall it doesn't, and that's fine because I think it's fine as a piece of literature that we can play around with, and to assess what things are on their own terms is kind of what we do. So, Rachael, any final thoughts?
No, I have none. I'm bereft.
Well, it's one of those awkward ones because it's a relatively short text. It's slightly too long to do in one session comfortably without rushing, but it's slightly short to do in 2. So we're finishing relatively swiftly in our Parliament of Bees with their proper characters, or a beehive furnished with 12 honeycombs as pleasant as profitable. So we'll find out if it's profitable next time. All that remains is to thank all these wonderful readers for their wonderful reading. Thank you very much, everyone, and goodbye. Poor squitter pulps.